Having been in my academic life very interested in autobiography and its relationship with poetry, it was the subject of my postgraduate thesis and lots of the teaching I did after that. I decided I'll give it a go and I'll see if you could do this in verse. So this is sort of Chris Packham in verse, but not quite. So that's one version of Slantwise. Now, as everybody here probably knows, tell it slant is what Emily Dickinson says poetry should do. You should always tell the truth, and I've invented nothing in these poems. I've changed a few names, but there's nothing invented. So it's a slantwise personal history, but it's also a slantwise, if you like, public history, because it's also mediated through the stamp album I was given when I was 7 years old. So the cover, which Janice has done for the book, is a series of slantwise stamps. And I'll have a little bit more to say about one of those in particular as we go on. I'm going to start at the beginning. With the 1950s. Ellie Sather. In the photos at the clinic, they were perfect opposites. Kay taken with her mother, Ellie held up by her grandma. Ellie's mum was always out. Ellie's dad wasn't there. One baby was round with pink cheeks. One baby thin with dark eyes and hair. That's the way it was. Until school, when the nurse called Ellie sallow, perhaps jaundiced. Mum scoffed. Hadn't they read her name? Hadn't they heard about her dad? They knew everything. Ellie's wash house had silverfish wriggling around the floor as the girls played. Later, they'd move on to the front room so they could explore each other's bits underneath their knickers. And Grandma walked in on them. She wasn't impressed by their discoveries. Ellie changed her name. She was going to have a baby brother or sister. But then she told teacher it had died. And afterwards, she didn't make it to the 11 plus group. So that was the end of that. And the 1950s, as reflected in the stamp album, the Triumph stamp album, went a little bit like this. Pearl necklaces. Scattered among the men in uniforms, are the women with their armoury of pearls in double rows. Only the old Queen Mary could carry off a triple. Before the new age of Elizabeth, whose crowned face takes up much of the album, they are sidekicks only, but significant bit players. Take Southern Rhodesia in 1947, and the beautiful young sisters, one to be sovereign, the other one already looking baffled about why she's there. It's a big deal for them, the royal visit, and they're all studying to look natural. Even the king, their father, is in shirt sleeves and bareheaded. But it's Lilibet's and Margot's faces that shine out from their frames that April on the halfpenny stamp, a farthing each. Then there's Monaco's Princess Grace, matched with her Rainier, mantelpiece oval in a perfect set. She plays her part to perfection. And Argentina's Eva, blonde hair shining, woman of the people, facing away from the camera, smiling at some crowd off stage, sharing her set with no one. All dull history to a 7-year-old in 1959, compared with bright birds and exotic animals, before Netflix and Lloyd Webber swung them all around again. So I hope that for those of you who are old enough to remember these decades, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, it brings back memories. For those of you who aren't, maybe it's recondite cultural history. So I hope there's something in it for everybody. I'm going to go to the 1960s now, and the Reverend. Reverend was the centre of every photograph. Grouped round him, the church wardens and vergers, curate too, in the days there was one. Kay kept them because her father was always there with his stave of office. Reverend, with his silver cross, led the whip walk round the streets, like strolling through a village rather than a dull part of town. Kay had to process as well, wearing a straw hat trimmed with flowers and a lemon dress with sprigs and ruffled pearls. As to be Rose Queen, she turned them down flat. Started a dialogue with the Reverend through the parish magazine about Jean-Paul Sartre, but kept it anonymous for her father's sake. Hinted, though, that she wasn't a true believer. Dad was devastated. She'd never be a teacher at the Sunday school. For a fortnight, he was very quiet. Kay never learned what the Reverend said. I should say, of course, that Kay is a character who may have some relationship with the poet. I can't imagine what, but some sort of relationship somewhere there. Let's move to the 1980s. No, sorry, we'll stay with the 1970s. One more time. Big Joan and the Stuff of Dreams. Sorry, Big Jean and the Stuff of Dreams. In this dingy warehouse on the bypass, they deal in dreams. Mostly, they stuff envelopes with 3 enclosures: promotions, return envelope, and the pools coupon itself. White, with blue boxes to put the X and place your bet. Then you wait till Saturday, and if you're lucky, send your claim. Tuesday is banging day, when everything is brought back for a dressing. You get to know some far-flung place names. Kay's are in Derbyshire. Fit the metal plate, slap down the handle, it makes quite a din in the cavernous room. All's ready to be sent. Friday is opening post. A clever machine's already made of nick. So just insert a biro, tear it open, flatten out the sides, staple the corners. There are bonuses for this, but a talking to if the checks and coupons don't match up. Big Jean, the head girl, knows all the ins and outs. She's on £20 a week. The other girl's content to follow her instructions. And Kay, the student, putting up with anything for 6 weeks a year, enough for Leonard Cohen's next LP, and Joni Mitchell's too. Looking at life from both sides now. All the girls know her dreams. The getaway the university will bring. They don't mind a bit. They ask her out with them on Friday nights. Once they went to Hare and watched the fit lads get all their kit off. It's the dawning of the age of Aquarius. But after the 70s comes the 80s, when we all grew up a little bit. Joy. Joy and Stu had the little house in the terrace, with 4 steps up to the red door. Hard work with a pushchair. She dispensed coffee and home cooking, with occasional cat sitting, and much advice, some of it wanted, on pregnancy and parenthood, like the dangers of poisonous laburnum trees, though Kay wouldn't let her child grub about in the garden, unlike Joy's 4, who were turned out most days for the fresh air and green learning. For her part, Kay didn't judge, even when Joy's 5th pregnancy came around, after Benjamin, Joseph, Abigail and Samuel. This was before climate change, and they were vegetarian, and not dog owners, or on benefits, only Christian Scientists. So, as neighbours, Joy and Stu were just fine. Until the day Joy turned on Kay, told her she was selfish for having a child and going to work, as if she had a choice, and how she knew Kay was selfish from the way she talked to her husband, which wasn't lovey-dovey. Something had to give. So Kay sold up to a gay couple. Maybe they'd be lovey-dovey, but not before she lost the baby. Nature's way, said the doctor. The traveller. St Pancras Station then was not a pleasurable place of grand departures, a destination in itself, just somewhere that East Midlanders must go to catch a packed train home. She was already at the table facing the engine, folder of papers at the ready for the journey, as he sat down opposite. The seats filled up, and they set off. And at that prompt the tears began to flow. She didn't try to wipe them. He didn't say a word. Nobody offered a handkerchief. But still the silent tears rolled down without a stop, collecting on her collar for the full 90 minutes of the journey, as if she wept the memory of all grief. The tide held back at the hospital, held back at the funeral, held back as a small white coffin hit the earth, but loosened now before the eyes of strangers. Until then came the merciful last station, and she gathered up the unopened folder. When her husband met her at the barrier, Kay's eyes were dry, then and forever after. Just one last poem. This is 1980s revisited at the children's section. Is your boy here? He says. Mine's 1983, February. Wife too, 6 months ago. New part. Couldn't be here with him. Only 3 feet. 2 daughters I've got. No lad to take to football. You moved away. Nottingham. Yeah, we didn't turn up against Forest. Your team's on tonight. They part at the flower shop by the entrance. A cafe there now, with little booths to have your cake and coffee, and plates in the Gothic windows, as if it were a wine bar, selling unseasonable felt rubbings to keep the children company, and plastic windmills and butterflies, like a stall at the seaside. Kay buys silk flowers, all white, a while before she comes again with fresh ones, not like him. How often is he here? Often enough to know the children, know each of them by name, and dates too short. Know after these 39 long years, almost as if they were his own. Know all there is to know.